Welcome to our second discussion on leadership, Emma.
Yay, happy to be here.
Last month we talked about the characteristics of a leader, we talked about the 5 levels of leadership, and we talked about why it was so important for people to understand that you don't have to be in a specific role or a specific position, because leadership is
about influence and influence alone.
Exactly. And so today we're going to talk about some of the myths that surround leadership. So a lot of people, if they haven't had the opportunity to sit in a leadership role before, there are a lot of things that they believe that may not necessarily be true. I know that that was the case for me before I was here at Hudson. There were a lot of things that I thought that just happened to not be true. So we're going to go through some of these myths that are, you can find them in the first section of your book, The 360-Degree Leader. I'm going to do a little commercial spot. The 360-Degree Leader. And then we're going to talk about some myths that actually are not inside the book. And we're going to go through and see whether we can debunk some of these myths.
Sounds great. I'm excited.
Okay, awesome. So the very first myth is called the position myth. And that says, I can't lead if I'm not at the top.
Well, I think that you can lead from anywhere that you are, and that's one of the things that we're learning about in the 360-Degree Leader, right, is that you don't necessarily have to have a position in order to lead, because, again, leadership's about influence, not about position. And if you're only holding that position and using that as your way of leading, then you're not going to get very far. I think even with, like, you think of like a friends group, you won't hold a position in your friend group, but you could have influence within that group. So it's not necessarily true that you have to have a position in order, or a top position even, in order to lead.
Don't move ahead. That's okay. I'm joking. Yeah, no, absolutely right. The inside the book it says leadership is a choice you make, not a place you sit. And again, to your point, we talked about this a lot last month, and we're going to be talking about it probably every time we sit down. The fact that leadership is influence. So as long as I can influence somebody to follow me, then I am a leader, right? And you're only a leader if people are following you. You're not a leader if you turn around and there's nobody following you, right? So leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So Emma, the position myth?
Debunked.
Debunked. Thank
you. The next myth is the destination myth. When I get to the top, then I'll learn to lead.
So I see this all the time, right? I've talked to friends before, or just other people in general, and they're like, leadership, I don't need to go to any leadership classes. I don't have a team of people. I'm not a leader. And I think that if we look at leadership from the aspect of, if we look at leadership from the aspect of its influence, and so you're a leader wherever you are in some aspect of your life, you're leading somebody, right? Then I think that's wrong. And then 2, I just think that it's so important that we try to learn this and practice this prior to being put on the spot in that position, right? We talked a lot about you don't stand at the starting line of a marathon and then all of a sudden learn how to run a marathon, or you don't stand over as a doctor, stand over somebody ready to do heart surgery and not have learned how to do it before. And so if you ever have any intentions of being in a leadership position, I think it makes sense to kind of practice this and learn this ahead of time. And if anything, it's going to put you in a better place when they are looking for that next person to promote. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is about growing yourself to prepare yourself for that next role and putting yourself in a position to be ready for that next role. You aren't going to get a promotion if people are looking at you without any influence. I mean, you might get it because of your knowledge and your skill, but you're not going to be able to go much further than that. So having that skill, learning and growing that skill for yourself is really important, so that you're prepared when you get to that leadership position.
Yeah. So the book says on this one, leading as well as you can wherever you are is what prepares leaders for more and greater responsibility. So Emma, the destination myth?
Debunked.
Debunked. You heard it here. So next we'll talk about the influence myth. And so the influence myth says, if I were on top, then people would follow me.
That's not necessarily, I mean, this goes back to the position myth of holding a position and then people will follow you. That's not necessarily true either. You don't have to hold a position to have influence with people. You can have influence no matter what position you hold, but that's up to you to do. You don't have to have a top position for people to follow you either. So
yeah.
In the book it says people who have no leadership experience tend to overestimate the importance of a leadership title. So I think that people who might not have, people think that once they get to that leadership title, then that's what's going to be the influence, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. What does build the influence is adding value to that person, building relationships. But, you know, so often you hear somebody say, oh, that's not my job, or I don't get paid to do that, or I don't get paid enough to do that. You know, typically when you hear somebody say that, the person that they are working for, or the person who's asked them to do something, is really only at that position level that we talked about last month when we talked about the 5 levels of leadership. And when somebody's only at that position level, you're following that person because you have to, because that's how you get your paycheck, and you're not going to go out of your way, and you do not have influence with that person. Your influence goes as far as the last penny that you've paid them, right? And that's it. But when you do start to build those relationships and you do start to add value, then you have so much more influence. It doesn't matter, to your point, if you're at the top of the organization or if you are, you know, sitting in the receptionist chair. It doesn't matter. That's where your influence comes from, not a job title.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. You can have influence no matter what your title is.
So Emma, the influence myth?
Debunked. The next one is the inexperience myth. When I get to the top, then I'll be in control.
Yeah, I think that so often we don't understand what goes into decision making, right? A lot of times we sit in our chair or in our bubble and we see the things that directly affect us, but we don't necessarily see how a decision made would affect this person sitting over here, or that person sitting over there, or the organization as a whole. So it's easy to kind of be selfish in these situations and sit and look and say, well, if I was doing that, I wouldn't have made that decision, with only a fraction of the information.
Absolutely. There's so many factors involved that need to be taken into consideration when decisions are made, that you as this person in this role aren't privy to all of that information. And so having that position doesn't necessarily give you full control over everything, because you have so many other variables to consider when making any kind of decisions.
Yeah. And, you know, who's really at the top, right? Because your boss answers to somebody, and your boss's boss answers to somebody, and your boss's boss's boss answers to somebody else. You know what I mean? So when we talk about when I get to the top, you know, I'll be in control, I'll make decisions differently. Well, just you know, just calm down a little bit, my friend.
Well, and even if you are at the top, you're still answering to the people below you.
Yeah.
And you're still answering to your customers or to your investors. There's always somebody to answer to. And even if you are your own boss and you own your own company and it's just you, you're still answering to somebody.
Yeah.
There really is in no way,
your
shape,
suppliers
or form.
or your whatever, customers,
Exactly.
to your point.
There is no one who is in full control of everything.
Yep. So Emma, the inexperience myth?
Debunked.
Next we'll talk about the freedom myth. So the freedom myth says, when I get to the top, I'll no longer be limited. I'm free.
Oh, that is just the biggest joke I've ever heard. I think your freedom is less and less. I don't think, I know your freedom is less and less as you get to the top. Just to the point of the last one of, you have a lot more people to answer to. You have a lot more work on your plate. You have a lot more to do. And so your freedoms actually get less. Your work-life balance is less. You know, even as I've taken on this role, I have worked way more hours. I've lost a lot of time with my family, and I'm not saying that's in a bad way. I feel very fulfilled in my job, but it's definitely, when I was first out of college and all I was doing was writing copy, I had way more freedoms in life than I do now.
Those were the days, man. When something went wrong, you could just be like, all right, well, ask my boss about it. It's not my responsibility.
Right. That's above my pay grade.
In the book, there's a chart, and it shows how, like, it says most of the time the amount of responsibility you take on increases faster than the amount of authority that you receive. And so, you know, like, the higher you go, like, how many people do you have reporting to you?
23.
Or on your team? Yeah, 23. Imagine if you were David Hudson and had over 4,000 people that you were responsible for, responsible for them and their families, their livelihood, right? To me, that doesn't sound like freedom.
No, not at all. Not at all.
The book says being responsible for others is always a greater burden than only being responsible for yourself.
That is so true. That is very true. I think that it's like I said, very fulfilling, but at the same time, it's a lot of pressure, and you do have to be concerned about the people who, it's their families too. It's not just the people who work for you, it's their families as well that you have to take into account. So
a little newborn baby.
Exactly. Little newborn babies.
So, Emma, the freedom myth?
Debunked.
Debunked.
Oh, the next myth is the potential myth. I can't reach my potential if I'm not the top leader.
I think that so often we focus on the next rung of that ladder and how high we can climb, as opposed to being focused on, you know, what we're doing and doing what we're doing really well, right? Doing the best in the job that you are, as opposed to trying to get as far as you can. Because the reality is, in this world, the percentage of people that can say that I'm the CEO or I'm the very top leader in an organization is very, very small. And, you know, there are a lot of people out there that say, yeah, I work for myself, or I do this on the side, so I'm my own boss. And yeah, that might be true, but being the CEO or the top leader that is in an organization that is responsible for multiple people, it's a very small percentage of people out there. So the chances that you are going to ever get to that very top position is really slim, right? You compare it to like the NFL, and there's so many college football players, and all of them think that they're going to go to college, they're going to get discovered, they're going to be great, they're going to go into the NFL, and they're going to be Tom Brady.
It's just not true.
How many Tom Bradys are there?
There's just one Tom Brady.
There is just one Tom Brady.
But there are, you know, but to that, you can still be very good and very skilled and reach your potential at no matter what your level is. And that's where it really becomes important, is you don't have to hold that top leadership role in order to reach your maximum potential and to continue to do better, right? And to be better for yourself, personally developing yourself. Yeah,
exactly. Emma, thanks for getting me back on track there. Once I went off on the football route, there's no telling when I was coming back. But the book says people should always strive to be at the top of their game, not at the top of their organization. And I think that's so true. We can do well. We can max our potential in the role that we are without being at the top of the organization.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Emma, the potential myth?
Debunked.
Debunked. Next is the all or nothing myth, and that myth says if I can't get to the top, then I won't even try to lead.
That's so ridiculous. I think that there's, again, like you said, not everybody's going to get to the top. And that doesn't mean that you should stop trying to lead and that you can't lead at any position that you're at. No matter what level you're at, no matter what position that you hold, you can still lead people because leadership is about influence, right?
Absolutely.
So saying that it's all or nothing is like a kid having a temper tantrum of, if I can't have it, then I don't want anything.
Sounds familiar. But that's true, right? So I took from the book, you can become a better leader wherever you are, improve your leadership, and you can impact your organization. You can change people's lives. You can be somebody who adds value. You can learn to influence people at every level of the organization, even if you never get to the top. By helping others, you can help yourself.
Yep, it's absolutely true. And I think, there's a lot of fulfillment, too, of helping others. And in that, you continue to help yourself. I really like the end of that.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. I think that's where I find fulfillment in life, is being able to be supportive and helpful to somebody else.
Yes, me too.
So, Emma, the all or nothing myth?
Debunked.
Debunked. You heard it here.
Heard it here first.
Okay, so there are some other myths, as I was kind of reading up about this and studying, there's some other myths that I came across that I just want to kind of like chat about for a little bit. The first one was leaders work smarter, not harder.
Well, I think that it's smarter and harder. You've gotten to that position because not only do you put in the hard work, but you're also thinking a bit outside of the box of, and that's the smart aspect of it, of not just doing things because that's always the way they've been done, but really thinking through things and looking at different scenarios of things. But it really does not replace the hard work and coming in early and being the last to leave and really taking that time to put in the effort, to put in the work, and you're also then leading by example, right? And showing the rest of your people, or your people, showing those that you lead that there is hard work involved in it.
I call them my people.
You?
My people. No, you're absolutely right? So the myth that leaders work smarter and not harder.
Debunked. Because
we say great leaders work smarter and harder.
Yes, I like that. So one of the other ones here is that leaders have all the answers.
Man, I hope not. Because I certainly would not be a good leader. Because I actually don't have most of the answers.
Well, and if you did have all the answers, then why do you need to lead anybody? Isn't it about, having a team, empowering a team because they have the answers too?
Yeah, it's so frustrating when, you're with somebody and you're talking to them, having a conversation, or you ask them a question and they say something just to say it. But it's not true, or I'm like, well, that's not really. I don't think that. But they say it because they don't want to seem like they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't want to seem dumb. They don't want to seem like they don't have the answer. But the reality is that the smartest people are the ones who know where to go and find the answers. Absolutely. They know how to do the research. They know how to do a little Google. They know how. They know who to ask. Exactly. So yeah, I think that. The myth that leaders have all the answers, Emma?
Debunked.
The next one is that great leaders are always in the spotlight, right?
I think that great leaders actually don't prefer the spotlight. I think that, yes, you are maybe in the front line of people, but it is everybody else who's doing all the work. And
but what about all my hard work? Shouldn't that be spotlighted?
Well, no, it's about the people who you're empowering to do the work and to help.
Absolutely.
That's what you should be doing. It's about them. It's about them putting the effort in. And I mean, I I don't want to take all the credit for anything. I'm not the one who did all of the work.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the one taking any of that credit. And I think that people who just want the credit aren't good leaders.
Yeah. Because their ulterior motives for doing what they do are spotlight, so people can look at me, right?
Yes.
There's a quote by Harry Truman that says, "You can accomplish anything in life, provided that you do not mind who gets the credit."
It's so true.
So, Emma, the myth that great leaders are always in the spotlight?
Debunked. Another one is leaders are always on.
This one is so personal to me, Emma, because we do think, it's so hard sometimes to turn yourself off and just be like, I need to shut my mind down, I need to rest. But this one's so personal to me because I talk a lot about like having that rest or reflection time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's impossible for us to get any better or to grow if we don't take time, I think daily and at the very least weekly, to say, okay, what happened today or this week? Did it go well? Did it not go well? Like, what pieces of it went well? What do I want to continue doing and do more of? Or what is not really working the way that I intended it for it to work, and so I might need to kind of do less of this, or stop doing this, or stop letting these people in my life start making sure that like my job focuses on this as opposed to this, because this is how it's going to grow me and get me better. But if we don't ever, like if we're always on, right, and we don't ever take that time to just like wind down, then we don't have that reflection time. And then on top of that, it is, when you run out, you can't give it to anybody else.
Absolutely.
You hear it all the time, right? Like if you're empty, you have nothing to give anybody else. So that vacation time, it's there for a reason. Like being able to just like sit and just like refill yourself up, I think is so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to your point of, if you're not reflecting and you're just going through the motions, you're not growing at all. And if you're constantly going, you're spreading yourself so thin you have nothing left to give, and you're not going to be a very good leader at that point.
Yeah, agreed. So Emma, the myth that leaders are always on?
Debunked.
Debunked.
The last one is great leaders are
Oh, without me,
born.
sorry.
That was you.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. Oh, the myth that great leaders are born and not made.
Well, we talked about a little bit about this the last time, is that I think there are some people who have a natural inclination for leadership. However, that's not going to get you through the rest of your life. You have to really hone that skill. It is a skill, and you have to continuously work at it in order to become better at it. And for those people who don't have a natural one, because it isn't born, it is something you can learn how to do and you can grow as long as you continue to work at it. It's not going to just come to you, just like anything else. It's not just going to come to you. I wake up and I'm the best basketball player in the world. That's not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, to your point, I always say leadership is a muscle, so the more you work it, the better you get at it. I loved your analogy of, basketball player, right? It is something that you have to learn, and it's something that you have to practice. And so to be a great leader, you do not have to be born charismatic or outgoing.
No.
To be a great leader, you have to care about your people, but you also have to just fill yourself with these things. So if I fill myself every single day with pop music, guess what? I'm going to be bopping around the office like singing pop music. But if I fill myself with, things to develop myself and personal growth and learning, right, then I'm going to be able to, that's going to spill out of me, and the people around me are going to grow as well. And that's what makes you a good leader, really. It is not, they're not born that way.
No,
right?
Absolutely not. And it is. You have to continually grow and work at it. I notice if I don't, like even just for a day, work on growing myself, it reflects in the rest of my day. I can tell immediately, and then the next day I get back into it, because it is tiring and it's a lot of work. But if you're not putting in the work, you're not going to get the return either.
Yeah, totally agree. So, Emma, the myth that great leaders are born and not made?
Faith, it is debunked.
Debunked. So, ladies, We've gone over today some of the myths that people think when they think leadership. And today, Emma and I have debunked all of them. Thank you.